I learned how to read Arabic without understanding Arabic. So like, I can read in Arabic, I don't know what I'm saying.
I definitely grew up in a strict Nigerian household.
I told my teacher something, she was like, oh wait, exciting news, oh wait, you're going to Africa soon, right? I was like, no, don't tell.
College was the point where I was able to do my own learning and like initiate my own journey to like learning more about my religion and strengthening my faith.
And I wanted to kind of remove myself as far away from my Sudanese identity as possible. So I said that I was Saudi Arabian, right? Because that's technically where I was born.
I'm from the Bronx, New York, but my family now are from Ivory Coast.
Like my parents from Gambia.
So yeah, my mom's from Gambia, one of the best countries in the world. My dad is from Senegal.
My family is from Somalia.
My pops is from Guinea-Conakry, the best Guinea out there. My mom is from Ivory Coast.
So I was born in South Korea, and my parents were immigrants from Africa to Korea.
I was born in Saudi Arabia, firstly from an immigrant perspective. Immigrants aren't the most welcome group in Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of hostility. Then when I moved to Sudan, that was kind of a different journey because I was an immigrant and then I immigrated back to Sudan.
My parents are immigrants from Ethiopia, and so that definitely was also in the mix when you think about religion, culture, intersectionalities of all those kinds of things. I grew up in a household, where I was the oldest of 3 children, and I think that has a lot to do with many of my experiences and expectations that were put on me.
I'm the oldest of 4. I have a brother and 2 sisters. I'm also the oldest grandchild, so big pressure,
Pressure. Wow. I can tell you there's a lot of it. I think in every aspect of my life, being African, there's a lot of pressure to, you have a culture, don't fold into the American culture. You're not a Black American, you're African, Guinean to be exact.
I would say I wish I knew more about my culture. For example, I'm not fluent in Somali, so I can understand it very well, but when it comes to speaking, I just, it's a tongue twister. I get tired, I get nervous. So when I'm around my elders and people in my community, I feel a little embarrassed sometimes not being a perfect Somali speaker, but I think it's a struggle that a lot of Somali diaspora children face.
So I remember when I started telling people I was Muslim, they was like, oh yeah, you're definitely, you're African. And once they knew I was African, it was over from there.
When I was in school, elementary school, maybe 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, I did not want a single person to know I was African. The jokes were too much.
So when I first came to the States, and the U.S. is very high power. Everybody wants to come to the U.S. from different countries. I looked back at my Sudanese heritage in my little 3rd world country there in East Africa, and I hated it. I tried to run away from my Sudanese identity.
So pretty much my first name is Mohamedou, and my middle name is Usman. So my dynamic was that people at school would call me Mohamedou or whatever, and then only people at home, my mom and everyone else, close family, would call me Usman. And maybe I don't know if I thought Usman was just too African, but if my mom called me Usman in front of my school friends, oh my God. I don't know, it doesn't make sense, but yeah, at the time I was like, yeah, I need to hide my Africanness as much as possible.
And I didn't really appreciate a lot of the beauties of where I came from. I didn't even appreciate being Black because I saw how successful all the white Americans were, or white people were generally. And that's propaganda that's fed to us from an early on, or even from being African. There's the whole Fair and Lovely phenomenon where we have that, unfortunately, obsession with whiteness.
Yeah, for me, I definitely grew up in a strict Nigerian household, very traditional. to the T. My parents really emphasized the Yoruba culture, which is very much so like about respecting your elders, doing like your just obligated duties like as a daughter. My dad and my mom really emphasized, no, you need to really understand leadership. Like leadership starts in the household. You need to understand having duties and making sure that you do them like full job, like no half jobs. And also just making sure that we were like very prepared for the outside world. Like every single thing from washing dishes, it was an event. My mom was like, you need to perform like you're outside. Like this is what's going to prepare you for when you're outside. I'm like, what are you like?
I think for my background, my culture and my religion are kind of intertwined, and sometimes it's hard to separate them because Somali culture is heavily influenced by Islam, which has basically influenced how I've been raised in school, growing up.
My pops, he was the one that came to culture, so he really let me know about Guinean culture and whatnot. Gave me the breakdown with their history and whatnot, you know what I'm saying? And my mom's, she's really the one that came hard with religion. Like, yeah, she's a devout Muslim. We'll be at Costco, and it's time to pray. She grabbed the boxes, go to a little corner, and we praying in the middle of Costco. Like, my mom was like that.
Wow. And then there's another cultural, spiritual pressure that was put on me from my family and also just from the community to just be the best that I could be as a Somali and as a Muslim. For example, there's been times in high school where like I live with my parents, they drive me to school in the morning, so they see how I look in the morning. And my mom has gotten a phone call from like a family friend, like a distant person who doesn't really, I don't even know them, like honestly. And they were like, oh, like I saw your daughter wearing pants today. And my mom's like, I let her wear pants outside. So, it's always like that type of expectation to always look your best, be your best.
My parents, like, they grew up religiously and they continue that here. Because I always say, like, my household was basically like Gambia, just like transplanted and put in the Bronx, just like, my parents didn't even care about civilization like that, Like, my mom really, I've never seen my mom wear a pair of jeans.
The Christianity that I was raised with was like kind of syncretic, in that like it had elements of like, just like it was like a Korean church or whatever. It had elements of like Korea's own cultural ethos within it. And at the same time, like my parents were also bringing in like their own, indigenous African understandings of like the world. So like even like when I was younger, when I was still Christian, like I would still, even though I was Christian, I still would enjoy reading about like Buddhism and Islam and stuff like that. So I converted in particular in like, let's say 2018. Yeah, the Ramadan in 2018 is when I officially did the Shahada and all that actually. So yeah, that summer.
So my mom is actually Christian and my dad is Muslim, but I grew up in a Muslim household. So like, that's how we were brought up. And we lived around a lot of my mom's family. We celebrate a lot of Christian holidays as well. So it's like we celebrate Muslim holidays and we celebrate Christian holidays. My parents are Nigerian. Like Nigeria is a melting pot of both Christianity, traditional religion, and Islam. So it's very normal to them to see like different religions anyways.
My family was not like, they were strict, but like not that strict in terms of religion. I would have to go to Arabic school every Saturday and Sunday. So it's like literally like that was my childhood. And but it was pretty fun to me too, because I got to meet like different like people that were in my community and like outside of my school.
So I think for me, I grew up going to like Islamic school, after school programs up until 8th grade when I went to high school, and I didn't really have like the time to do that. And I think for me, that was really important in like helping me learn how to read Arabic and like have access to reading the Quran, things like that. But at the same time, like when we were in those schools, like we didn't really have the opportunity to like learn for the sake of learning and like appreciating our religion. It was very much like you have to memorize this and you have to do this and like you need to know how to speak in Arabic eventually, because like that's and I was just like, okay, like And I remember like even being in Islamic school, like there's a lot there of like people expecting me to not be able to like read Arabic with, you know, like the proper accent because my parents are from Ethiopia, and being like, oh wow, like you're really good at it, huh? And it's like, why can't I be good at it, you know? There's so many things there.
So going off of the pressures again, I would say another thing that I kind of face with religion is obviously my race. You know, like I would go to the mosque and there'll be a lot of like people from the Arab world or, you know, South Asians or whatever. And like for some, like I felt like for me, it was like I had my African culture and then my Muslim culture. But for a lot of them, it was just like my, you know, the culture at home is my Muslim culture. So I kind of felt like I wasn't being Muslim enough around them. I think maybe the reason my perception was skewed because, like, for example, we had to learn Islam and Arabic. But them Arabic's their main language. Arabic's everything about their culture. Yeah. So it's like, I felt like, oh, that means like they're just more Muslim because they're just born and they're Muslim. Whereas like we have to learn and that, you know what I'm saying?
I definitely agree with that because I think like it was the idea that their culture was already like the religion, you feel me? So it was like my culture and my religion. For them, it was culture and religion. Yeah. So I think that idea was like, all right, because you learn stuff about the religion, you're like, well, we do things this way. You know what I'm saying? Like, so what's going on here?
When we came to America, one of the things that are in the minds of our parents is that we moved here for success. They push us, as soon as we come in, they push us into education, learn English and that, and master your sciences. We were a religious household, but the problem was when we came to the States, the hustle and bustle made my parents focus more on secular education and less on Islam. Islam kind of took a backseat, but they still, there was still the expectation and pressure to keep up your Islam to the same level. Right, even though it's not, in terms of education, in terms of time, I'm spending 8 hours a day, full-time job, learning all this other stuff. And then in my spare time, whenever I can scrap together 30 minutes or so of maybe like Quran or Sirah. But they expected us to have both. And you can have both. It's not, but you just need to, even the playing field a little bit.
Since of the fact that I'm the oldest child and I'm a girl, there is a lot of expectations in African Muslim households to do well academically in school. You're setting the tone for your siblings to do well, especially like from an immigrant household. Everyone wants their kids to be successful, get into great colleges, hopefully get a great job, great grad school, whatever it may be. So I just always had to be disciplined as a student in high school, and that was a large pressure for me.
I guess for me, the way like I was raised, I guess coming into college, I'm always conscious that I'm here for something. Sometimes literally sometimes people ask me, oh, like how do you stay motivated to do work? Sometimes I'm like, well, I have a family back home and none of them are in college and I'm in college. So if I want my little brothers to keep going, I have to kind of keep going. If I want to make my mom proud. I feel like everyone experiences this, but for me it was like a bit different in the sense that like, I felt like I'm in school not just for myself type of thing. Whereas like I could see a lot of people around me, I could see like they just do whatever they feel like.
Yeah, back to what Mo was saying about how like, there was a school and there was home. Like with me, like it started since like daycare, right? Like my name Alarin, right? But like before I went to like daycare or whatever, like it was Alarin. Like that's how it was pronounced, this, that, and the third. But I literally stepped into the daycare day one and like the lady could not pronounce it. Like, she just couldn't. I'm like, it's Alarin. What? And I was like, Alarin, or whatever, Alarin. Whatever, however people pronounce it. Like, at this point, like, it don't really, like, it's not that deep. Like, it don't really matter to me. But, like, it was, like, I think that was, like, the biggest shock, like, culture shock wise. Like, yo, like, these people don't really get where I'm from or, like, what I'm about. So it was, like, that was the beginning of, like, I guess, like, the two Alarins. Alarin at school, Alarin at home. And I think that's a big, like, dichotomy I had to grow up with, and they kind of met each other forcefully in college because there was no going home. It was like, yo, face yourself, come together type. Yeah, but nah, that's how it was.
So I've always been within and very comfortable being around other Black people, and it feels like people at my school haven't done that as much. Even like speaking with some of my friends who don't have the same problem, right, but they've kind of had similar experiences, it's like when you do go to these schools or whatever, right, often I think you have to like literally leave your community and go to a different school physically that's far away and be there for a really long time. So like quite literally removes you from your community and the people you're around. So like a certain sense of like alienation, I feel like. And I feel like that's like really, really prominent at Tufts in particular.
And coming to a place like Tufts is almost like by the time you leave, you're surely to be like, to kind of push that out, like to kind of literally forget about where you come from. And for me, it's like I had to really, really fight that because that's not what I want.
That isn't to like deride anyone per se, but it's just like, even like for myself, noticing how like I was a certain way socially coming in, but like now that I've been here and then I leave, there's like a very clear like, oh wow, like just like the way I fundamentally understand how I should go about being around people has just changed so drastically. And even speaking with other people, they mention how like they'll go back home and like their friends will be like, yo, why are you being weird right now?
Because like being at Tufts, like that was the first time I really experienced that people, especially like other black people, it wasn't like this, like you'll walk down the street and you expect to acknowledge each other in a very particular way, but people just kind of look at you. Kind of like how white people look at you, like, oh. And I'm like, wait, like I'm expecting more than this, right, between us. But then you start quickly realizing that there is nothing between you and a lot of people. And so it's like the first time I had to really deal with that. And then you start it starts really impacting you because like when no matter when you come to a university and the way the university is structured, it's like a campus. You're enclosed in like this space. So no matter what, it's gonna affect you and everything that you do because you're spending an overwhelming amount of time there, right? You're spending months upon months before you go back to another place, right? Next thing you know, you become kind of antisocial in very particular ways that you weren't probably before. But because everyone else is not really social like that, it's just gonna impact the way you move also, like socially as well.